Alright, we've got a wild turn of events from Sony's Spider-Man universe, and it's coming from none other than insider Daniel RPK. But what makes this especially juicy? It might be connected to something even bigger, the potential sale of DC by Warner Brothers. Yeah, let's break this down. So Daniel RPK is reporting that Sony has basically hit pause on all of its live-action Spider-Man spin-offs. That includes the much-hyped appearance of Knull, who we saw in Venom: The Last Dance. Now that's a huge shift in direction. But honestly, that's kind of in line with what we've been seeing from Sony lately. A lot of back and forth, unclear planning, and a franchise that feels like it's spinning out with no clear direction. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The Sony Spider-Man Extended Universe, let's be real, it's been a bit of a disaster. From Morbius to Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter, and even Venom: The Last Dance. These movies haven't exactly landed. They felt pointless, disconnected, and in some cases, like they shouldn't have been made at all. But now comes a silver lining. According to these latest reports, Sony might be walking away from the storyline they teased in the latest Venom film. Remember the hype around Knull? Fans were speculating big time about where he'd show up next. And Sony did suggest after Venom released that they might be steering away from the Spider-Man universe entirely. And that got MCU fans seriously excited. Why? Because it opened up the possibility that Sony's tease of Knull wasn't meant for their own universe, but for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And with all the multiverse chaos coming to Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, there's a real shot that Venom and even Knull could make the jump to the MCU. Imagine this, Tom Holland finally rocking that iconic black Spider-Man suit, the Venom symbiote, in the MCU. That's a moment comic book fans have been waiting for. The potential to recreate the legendary comic cover? Absolutely massive. But up until now, Sony has been vague, flip-flopping on whether they're going to stick with their messy Spider-Man universe or abandon it altogether. And the truth is, they need Spider-Man to make any of it work. Let's rewind for a second to how all of this even started. Back when Tom Holland was first cast, Sony brought him into the MCU because frankly, they needed help. They went to Kevin Feige while trying to figure out the next Amazing Spider-Man movie, and he basically said, "Don't do it, it won't work." And you know what? He was right. Spider-Man flourished in the MCU, Civil War, his own trilogy, major Avengers moments, it all worked. And thanks to the deal between Disney and Sony, Tom Holland still has several movies on the way. Secret Wars, Doomsday, another trilogy, one mysterious project we haven't figured out yet. So yeah, MCU Spidey isn't going anywhere. But the big question is, what's Sony's endgame here? Daniel RPK's report makes it clear. If Sony is pressing pause now, especially with a fan favorite like Knull in the mix, that's a big move, and this brings us to a deeper conversation. There's a ton of criticism from fans, actors, and even people behind the scenes on Sony's Spider-Man films. The recurring theme? Sony doesn't really understand Spider-Man or his fans.
Do you speak any English? Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
So maybe this pause isn't just about creative burnout. Maybe it's about completely rethinking what they want to do with the franchise. And this is where things take a crazy turn. You've probably heard the rumors. Warner Brothers might be looking to sell off DC. And guess who's rumored to be eyeing a bid? Sony. Now that's a major shift in focus. If Sony is thinking about ditching their spin-offs and instead jumping over to DC, this changes everything. Because now we're not just talking about Spider-Man's future, we're talking about the future of two superhero universes. There's a fair case to be made that Spider-Man is the most popular superhero in the world. But here's the dilemma. Sony's proven that without a solid Spider-Man, their spin-offs fall flat. Meanwhile, DC comes with a deep bench of characters and lore if handled right. So here's the million-dollar question. Is Spider-Man plus his supporting universe, like Miles Morales and Gwen, worth more than the entire DC collection? And if Warner Brothers is really looking to offload DC and Sony is seriously in the mix, that could spell massive changes for both fan bases. Let's not forget, Sony needs to release a Spider-Man-led movie every 5.5 years or so to keep the rights. If they don't, the rights revert back to Disney and Marvel. That's why they keep making these subpar films. They're racing the clock to hold on to the IP. Sure, they're making bank by letting Tom Holland appear in the MCU, but creatively, it's a mess. So what happens if Sony really goes after DC? Well, DC fans who believe in James Gunn's vision, they might be freaking out right now. His Superman reboot is just days away, and now this rumor drops? Not ideal timing. If Sony takes over, they could let James Gunn keep steering the ship, which would be smart. He's built serious hype around this DCU reboot, but it's anyone's guess what Sony would actually do if they gain control. Meanwhile, on the Spider-Man side of things, this could be huge. If Sony shifts its focus to DC, Spider-Man could be freed up to fully return to the MCU, just in time for the major reboot we know is coming. Whether they reset the character or keep Holland, the timing couldn't be better. And it's not just about Peter Parker, this opens up the door for Miles Morales, Gwen Stacy, and other fan favorite characters to join the MCU, fully integrated. So the fact that Sony is reportedly putting all future Spider-Man spin-offs on hold, despite having to produce them to keep the rights, it's a pretty big clue that they might be eyeing the DC acquisition seriously. Bottom line, if Sony buys DC, it could change everything. Yes, it could spell trouble for DC fans, but for Marvel fans, it could be the final piece in a puzzle that brings Spider-Man home for good. Imagine it, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and finally Spider-Man, all under one roof. It's a dream scenario that's looking a lot more possible now. So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Would you be thrilled to see Spider-Man fully back in the MCU with no Sony strings attached? And how will you feel if Sony took over DCU and became its new creative home? Let's talk about it. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end, and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to stay locked in on all latest news across both Marvel and DC.